Good afternoon, and welcome to our Preparing for Retirement 8,000 Days, an entire phase of your life waiting to be reinvented webinar. I'm Deborah Hickey, and I, along with Eleanor Baker and the entire team at Carter Financial Management, want to thank you for joining us today. One of our key roles as financial planners is helping clients prioritize their financial goals, with planning for retirement as a major focus. We want you to enjoy a successful and rewarding retirement. So today we are very excited to have Bill McManus with the Applied Insights team at Hartford Funds, who is going to walk us through his presentation that goes beyond the dollars and cents of planning for retirement and considers the various phases of retirement, what you may face in retirement, and how to make the most of your retirement years, which may span a period of 20 to 30 years or even longer. With 20 years of experience in financial services, Bill has worked with countless financial professionals and their clients. He's got a knack for simplifying complex financial planning and investment strategies to engage and educate clients and prospects. He's also passionate about helping us look towards the future to anticipate and prepare for lifestyle changes that may lie ahead. Bill has been widely quoted in consumer and trade publications such as U.S. News and World Report and wealthmanagement.com. He has also appeared as a featured guest on Bloomberg Radio to discuss his views on retirement-related topics. He currently lives in Austin, Texas, so it's not far off. And a couple of fun facts about him is he loves to travel. He's actually visited 25 countries and counting, with his favorite destination so far, Vietnam. During his time as a child actor, he was featured in 12 commercials and one movie. So Bill, we'd love to know what that movie is. And a former member of the U.S. national rowing team, Bill has 2 bronze medals from World Championships in Lucerne, Switzerland, and Seville, Spain. Very impressive. Ken Kerr, who's a regional vice president and advisor consultant at Hartford, is also with us today. And he supports financial advisors and our clients with educational material, client webinars like this one today, product expertise, and practice management strategies. Thank you so much, Ken, Bill, and the rest of the Hartford team for coordinating and presenting this valuable content for us. Bill, would you please get your slides ready as I go through some housekeeping items? So if you have any questions for Bill, we're going to leave some time at the end of the presentation. And you should see at the bottom of your screen a Q&A button. So please type in your questions and we'll do our best to address those near the end of the presentation. Bill, thanks so much for being here today to share your insights on preparing for retirement. We really appreciate you, and Ken, and the floor is yours. Take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Deborah. I guess just first things first, is the screen up and looking good?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's first thing. Second thing, the movie was called Worth Winning with Mark Harmon. I think maybe the best piece of advice I can give folks is don't waste your time watching the movie. It wasn't that good. And then third, I need to get marketing to update my bio. I'm up to 31 countries now, so it keeps going. But I am glad to be, I'm glad to be here in Texas, where in Austin the sun is finally shining, and glad to be here with everybody this afternoon. As Deborah said, my name is Bill McManus. I'm a vice president of our Applied Insights team at Hartford Funds. And basically what myself and my team does is we handle all of the, I call it non-investment related resources that we have at Hartford Funds. So we have tremendous investment partners that manage our lineup of mutual funds and ETFs, but we've also strategically partnered with really some of the top thought leaders in the financial services industry. And we work with them directing research, developing content, and then ultimately having the great opportunity to deliver it to folks just like we have here on the line. For today's conversation, I'm going to tap into what really is our deepest, our longest standing partnership. And that's with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and specifically this program they have called the Age Lab. So what I always like to do at the start of any conversation is just give a little background to the Age Lab. Who are they? What kind of work are they doing? Why is that work, I would say, increasingly relevant for all of us on the line? And then we're going to jump into our topic, our project, one of my favorites, called 8,000 Days. And really what this is it's a way to lend perspective, I think, to the planning process. Oftentimes, particularly, us in financial services, we sort of have set up retirement as just like one big phase with some of the language that we've used. But now that we're experiencing it for such a longer time, we need to delve in and go a little bit deeper on it. So we'll get into that here in a minute. So, quick background on the Age Lab. Started in 1999, Hartford Funds. We were a founding member. It's housed in the School of Engineering Systems, but it's multidisciplinary. So the way that they describe it, about a third engineering, a third every flavor of psychology that you could think of, and the remaining third is really a mixed bag. There's researchers with backgrounds in gerontology, anthropology, healthcare, architecture, economics, the list goes on and on. The whole idea and concept behind the Age Lab, study and understand changing demographics, specifically the impacts of extended longevity, extended life expectancies. If you go back to 1900, which in the grand scheme of history is really not that long ago, life expectancy in the industrialized world was less than 50. And fast forward today, and the prospects of living into our 80s, 90s, and beyond it's pretty much expected. At the lab, they call that a longevity bonus. So what they do is they work with businesses and industry groups to rethink and reshape products, services, technology, how it's all delivered to this changing segment of our population, not only here in the United States, but around the globe as well. Always like to share an example or two, a little outside of the scope of our discussion, but I think this will give you some real flavor, some color to the type of work that they're doing at the lab. So if you're following along on the screen, and if not, I'll do my best to describe it, but what you'll see is two researchers wearing kind of what looks like a funky bodysuit. The name of that suit is Agnes. Stands for Age Gain Now Empathy System. So we could take anybody on the line. We can dress you in the Agnes suit. You see it, it looks like coveralls, but it has a helmet with straps that attach to the arms to reduce mobility. A neck brace reduces the amount of degrees you can rotate and tilt your neck. There's a system of weights and pulleys in the legs and lower back to simulate fatigue and friction, gloves that simulate arthritis, goggles that simulate macular degeneration. We can calibrate the suit. We can make you feel 80, 85, 90, 100 years old. Believe me, every time I go to the lab, I beg them, can you please come up with a suit to make us feel the other way? That would be more helpful. So hopefully they're working on that. But you may have caught the key word in the title of this suit. It starts with an E, empathy. What is the experience like? So they've used the Agnes suit at places like CVS Pharmacy. CVS wanted to know, what's it like for someone who's 90 years old to shop in our store? What's the experience of having to walk down the long aisle, bend down and get something off of the lower shelf or reach up high? Based off of that data, they've worked on a redesign. Islands instead of the rows, widen them out, change the way products are placed on the shelf, how they're grouped together, lighting. All of that impacts the experience. And what you have is CVS noticing our consumer base is changing. We need to adapt and change as well. Went to the Age Lab to fundamentally understand what should this change look like. One other example I'll share, because it's on the screen, in the transportation industry, which is where the lab really started their work. But we've got our Volkswagen Beetle, Miss Daisy. They do have a sense of humor at MIT, driving Miss Daisy. And I'm pretty sure Miss Daisy is the world's only $3 million VW Bug. It's actually hooked up to a simulator at the Age Lab, has eye tracking software, conductance in the steering wheel to measure the sweatiness in your palms, all designed to understand the impacts of stress and physical limitations. What new technology can we incorporate to assist with aging drivers? So I hope that gives everyone, a flavor for the kind of work they're doing. There's all kinds of other examples, healthcare, pharmaceutical industry, consumer services, that list goes on and on as well. From our standpoint, where we direct research is really twofold. One on the, call it the decision-making behavior aspect. So we'll touch on that a little bit. But I'd say really the heart and soul of what we do, and that'll be the main topic today is, if you think about it, we are all preparing for navigating through this unprecedented era of longevity. So what we want to ensure is, as we are experiencing this extended quantity in our lifespans, that the quality is there as well. And we think through some careful conversations, considerations, planning, we can really help in that aim. So what we're going to do today, well, first let me introduce you to Dr. Joe Coughlin, founder and director of the Age Lab. Yes, I guess you have to have a bow tie on if you're going to be, associated with MIT. But Dr. Joe sets up our conversation really well. he says we have this longevity paradox, right? We've achieved what we've always wanted to. We're living longer. But his argument is now that we really don't have a great idea of what to do with all of that additional time. So we'll see what Dr. Joe means as we get through today. So I'm going to introduce you to the 8,000 days topic. Again, the great way to just lend perspective. We're going to look at 4 phases of retirement because, again, now that we're experiencing it for such an extended period of time, we can no longer think of retirement as just one part of life, period of life. We have to think of 4 different phases and then how we can prepare for that. We'll wrap up with that. So jumping in here, going to give you some stories. We'll look at some data, and then we'll get to the 8,000 days. So we've got 4 women, ironically, all women here on the screen. First, Maria Brañas is the oldest living person currently. She's 115, and I can't do the math, but 6 months or so. She was born in the U.S., but she's from Spain. Jeannie Kalman is believed to be the oldest living person, since we've had these records. Passed away in 1999 at the age of 122. However, there's a little bit of controversy there. There's actually a claim that she wasn't 122. She was only 99 years old because in 1927, she assumed her mother's identity to avoid an inheritance tax. So TBD, if we get any more info, we'll keep you posted. Catherine Switzer loved this story a few years ago, ran the Boston Marathon at age 75. What was really cool, she did it on the 50th anniversary of her being the first woman ever to run the Boston Marathon. And then, of course, we got Julia the Hurricane Hawkins, who has 2 gold medals at the senior games in the 50-meter and the 100-meter dash. So, if you're watching the news or you're flipping through websites, you see stories like this all the time, right? People call it knocking down maybe some of the traditional age barriers. We see it in the data. Right now, 65-year-old couple, 50% chance one will live to age 92. The fastest growing age cohort in the country is still the 85 plus segment of the population. And probably more importantly is not only are we living longer, we're doing it differently. I saw a report recently, typical 60-year-old in the United States needs to plan on 25 years of healthy aging, not just aging, healthy aging without any disability. So kind of an evolving context, right, of what this looks like. Now, again, data is great, statistics are great, but we like stories, right? Because we want to, again, put things into perspective. So the Age Lab came up with this concept of 8,000 days. So 8,000 days, anybody out there really quick at math, it's like a little shy of 22 years. And what we find is we can segment out these, an average lifespan into these 8,000 day, 22-year roughly periods. So looking like something we see on the screen, let's just say from the time we're born to roughly the time we graduate from college, right? That's going to be about 22 years, 8,000 days. From that period to your first midlife crisis, we have multiple now that we're living longer, sorry to say, but that's another 8,000 days. From that period to our traditional retirement, you guessed it, you're seeing the pattern, 8,000 days. What's different for all of us today when we think about that last phase? Number one, it could be another 8,000 days or 10,000 or 12,000, right? We just don't know. But here's the real challenge, and it speaks back to Dr. Joe's quote. If you think about those first 3 phases, generally speaking, we have a pretty good idea of what it is we're supposed to do. We go to school, we're educated, we graduate, we start working, we advance in the career, maybe we start the family, house in the suburbs, ball games and recitals on the weekend, the family vacation, right? There's just a lot of institutions, a lot of rituals that drive our activity. But geez, you get to that last phase, think about any advertisement or brochure or marketing material that's sort of selling and setting up this last phase. My guess is you're going to see pretty similar images, right? A couple walking hand in hand on the beach, somebody on a golf course, playing with a grandkid, people riding tandem bicycles. I don't know who does that, but that's like the cool thing to do. Pickleball ads, I'm sure, are going to be coming in fast with this stuff. And that's great, right? These are things that we want to think about and we want to be excited for and we want to enjoy. But if you go back again, 8,000 days, right? This probably looks a lot more like what we see here, right? That there's just so many more, probably more question marks, ambiguity, need for planning, probably than the first 3 phases combined. Yet collectively, we just haven't gotten a great vision. What Dr. Joe would say is our traditional view of retirement, it's not inaccurate, it's just incomplete. He actually uses the word woefully incomplete. So we think there's a tremendous opportunity, right? A tremendous opportunity to engage, again, plan, have conversations to ensure that quality as we're experiencing the quantity. So what we like to do, as I mentioned before, instead of thinking of retirement as one big phase, we want to look at 4 different phases of retirement. The 4 phases as we see it: number 1, the honeymoon phase; number 2, the big decision phase. That's where we'll spend most of the rest of our time. Number 3 is navigating some of the complexities around longevity. And then lastly, the solo journey. Quick note on the phases: they're not static, right? We don't move from one phase to the next after 2,000 days. This is just meant and extremely helpful in just driving conversations around these big topics. So, honeymoon phase. Before I flip the screen, I'll share with you all a piece of research that we have done. Yes, honeymoon phase, all the fun things we've been looking for, the big trip, whatever it may be. But we're seeing some nuance there. So the Age Lab did a survey, broad-based survey, 30,000 respondents. We asked folks, write down the answers to 4 different questions: year of your birth, gender, zip code. We get all the socioeconomic data that we use. And then the last part was write down 2 things you envision yourself doing after age 65, right? 2 things you envision doing after age 65. And, if you're already 65, it's fine. Just, bump it up sort of 5 years incrementally. The results came back. You probably may have yelled out to yourself at the computer the first number 1 answer. The number 1 answer was travel. The interesting thing about that is the MIT Age Lab finds that post-retirees travel less than pre-retirees do, even though we say it's the number 1 thing we're going to do. So that was number 1. And then we certainly saw things like time with family and hobbies and so on and so forth. But the number 2 answer was kind of surprising. What do I envision doing after age 65? Number 2 answer was work. 65, I'm still going to work. Hopefully I didn't lose anybody with that comment on a retirement-based seminar. But here's the key: work, maybe not in the same way, shape, or form that you did for a majority of your career. Some type of work, small business, consulting. I put nonprofit, volunteerism in there as well. Work has changed in a lot of instances in terms of how we actually perform it, right? So we're able to do work, depending obviously on what we do, a little bit longer. The technology that has come along that has just enabled us to work in a completely different, form and fashion. We can start talking about remote work and all the type of opportunities there. Reasons for working, we see income certainly is important, but what we find is it slips a little bit further down the list, because we think about, what does work provide outside of income? Meaning, purpose, challenges, camaraderie. Those things are pretty hard to replicate outside of that environment unless we're extremely intentional about it. And I'll speak to the men on the line. And the only reason I'm singling out the men is men, we tend to identify who we are more with what we do, more so than women. Women are much better at creating networks, outside of a primary place of employment. So, we really have to, again, think about intentionality. So, if you go back to my question, 2 things you envision doing after age 65, you may have shouted out golf or hunting or whatever it may be, and that's great. But we have to go back and remember 8,000 days, right? No matter how much you like time with the grandkids or whatever it may be, it's a lot of time to fill, right? What is it that we're going to be doing? The Bureau of Labor Statistics does time use surveys, and they have an interesting one where they look at where do people spend their time when they go from working full time to not, right? So working full time to not. Obviously work, that drops off. The biggest increase in where people spend their time when they go from working full time to not, watching TV, right? And I don't think most of us, if we're asked, our hopes, dreams, goals in retirement, our first response would be, I want to binge more Netflix, right? Or, Ted Lasso was awesome. I don't think that would be our response. But, that's what we see happening. So again, this is where this intentionality comes in. And again, work in some way, shape, or form. Again, the meaning, the purpose, the challenges, everything associated with that. We see a lot of benefits there. Just a little nuance to the honeymoon phase, just from income needs standpoint, we see here, 80% of people report providing financial assistance to adult children. That's not surprising, but increasingly so, we're seeing people having to provide financial assistance to mom and dad, right? So just a little bit of a change in terms of, just shifting demographics. So again, yes, the honeymoon phase, all the great fun things that we want to do, but also, a little bit more of a conversation, just a little bit of ambiguity there from, what previous traditional retirement views would be like. So next phase is the big decision phase. And as I mentioned, this is where we'll spend most of the rest of our time, because this is where we want to tackle what we call the big ticket items. So we came up with a project with the Age Lab, 15 years ago now, it seems like, which is crazy, but it's kind of the underpinning of a lot of what we do. The title of this particular project is called The Quality of Life. And the quality of life based off of 3 questions. And these are 3 questions that were researched, developed at the Age Lab, 3 questions that they say every single one of us should have conversations about with our loved ones, with our advisors. The reason we pick these 3 questions, what we find is the answers to them can be predictive. They can be predictive of your future quality of life. Again, the title of the project. I will warn you, the questions might be a little bit surprising coming from MIT, rocket scientists and engineers, but these are the 3 questions that they came up with. Number 1, who will change my light bulbs? Number 2, how will I get an ice cream cone? And 3, who will I have lunch with? Right? Who will change my light bulbs? How will I get an ice cream cone? Who will I have lunch with? Simple questions, seemingly simple by design. These questions they've proven to be extremely effective at, I'd say, starting the conversation around, what the Age Lab has identified as the most important topics that we need to consistently consider. Where do I live? How do I access what I want when I want? The social network that I have, right? All crucially important to quality of life. So let me just take a minute on each one. And I think just what we can notice is it's a simple question, but so many different areas and opportunities and ways for conversation and planning. So light bulbs is all about housing. Housing is the number 1 out-of-pocket expenditure for people over age 65. And that's with or without a mortgage, right? Because we think of what else goes into housing costs: taxes, insurance, maybe HOA fees, maintenance, which will go up as we age. What about big improvements that might need to be made to the home? AARP issued a survey. They asked people, where do you intend to age? 90% of us said, in my own home, right? Have we spent the time to think about safety, accessibility, appropriateness of that home? If not, what type of modifications, what type of technology might need to be incorporated? Call it awareness, call it demand. There's actually a certification now for contractors and home builders called CAPS. Stands for Certified Aging in Place Specialists. They're experts at understanding, what might need to be done to the home to help me in that aim. There's a cost for all of that, right? And oftentimes that's an unexpected cost. Then we think about the network, right? Who will change my light bulbs? Traditionally when I'm in a live audience and I ask that question, who will change your light bulbs? Traditionally speaking, the first answer I get is, well, my family. And that's great, but just looking at changing demographics, baby boomer generation versus the World War II generation, fewer children by 2 on average. Children are much more likely to be geographically dispersed. We're just so much more mobile now than we were in generations past. So we have to think, who's there in the network that can help me with things that, certainly never want to be a burden, certainly don't have any crisis type mentality, right? So really important to consistently ask that question. And then just the last part, the Age Lab is really big on challenging us. Going back to that question, where do you intend to age? 90% of people say they want to age in their own home. I don't like to make assumptions, but my guess is most people, when they respond to that question, probably thinking of the home that they're in, paid off the mortgage, raised a family, all the memories, so on and so forth. The Age Lab actually makes the case that people today, we are more likely to move more times after the age of 50 than we did our entire lives up to that point. And circumstances, right? Maybe we do the initial downsize. Maybe we want to move closer to family who has moved out of the immediate area. We've seen people do that a couple times. Maybe we need to find a place more appropriate for needs that we have. Then maybe we have multiple moves within there. The only reason I bring that up is that is a drastically different picture, right? If we're sitting down and saying, all right, this is the plan, stay in this house throughout retirement, so on and so forth, to the reality being, wow, we might move 3 or 4 times over the next 5, 6, 7,000 days. Just the cost, the complexity, the challenges associated with that. I don't think most folks, I don't really think about that. So again, just some nuances to sort of this whole idea of housing and the light bulb. So that's number 1. Number 2, and this is one that we actually are working really good, working towards sort of solving for. but this is all about access, right? How do I access what I want when I want? So when I first saw this question, I said, I love ice cream, but why aren't we asking about something that's like important? I need to get to a doctor's appointment. I need to go to the grocery store, things that need to happen. And the researchers at the Age Lab said, sure, those things are obviously important, but they can also be arranged. What we think is really important, it's a nice night. You just had dinner. All you want to do is go and get an ice cream cone because that's going to make you happy right now. What does that look like? Right? We don't think you can overstate the importance of being able to access what you want when you want. So certainly this ties into housing, right? Where we're locating ourselves, so on and so forth. And technology is going to kind of come a long way to help us out in this aim, but just thinking about access is really, really important. And this also ties into the last question, who will I have lunch with? The social network that we have it's so important. It's the motivator. It's what keeps us engaged. It's what keeps us active. The risks of isolation, we've seen it from a health, both physical, cognitive health deterioration standpoint, are significant. I'd say with this one, the word I use this word a lot, but intentionality. Intentional about incorporating new people into our social network, intentional about incorporating younger people into our social network. Technology, I would never say technology is an apt replacement for social interactions, but it's proven to be a pretty good supplement to help us either stay engaged with folks that might not be in the area all the time or to find and locate new social networks. But this one's really important. There's actually been a study done at Harvard, and it's the longest running study of its kind, and it's on health and happiness and health, and they've been doing it for 85 years. And what they've found across all different areas of the socioeconomic spectrum, and what they found was the number one indicator of happiness and thus health was not wealth or power or success or anything like that. It was the quality of the friendships that you have. So it's really important, and it kind of comes down all the work we do with the lab. The social network that we have is always what pops up. So again, 3 simple questions, but so many different areas for conversation and planning, and just questions coming up around, again, where we live, what that looks like, housing, so on and so forth. So I would spend some time on the big decision phase and have some conversations and start just thinking about it, how that sort of plays out. Because again, those 3 questions can help determine our future quality of life. Okay, last 2 sections. Third one, navigating some of the complexities around longevity. Just understanding, as we're experiencing longevity, challenges can arise, particularly around health. We see here, we are pretty much, I won't say fixated, but mostly concerned about the financial aspect of retirement through most of our lives until we get there. And I'd say part of that's obviously because of the great work like folks like Deborah that have done, we got ourselves set up, but also understanding, health, physical, cognitive health, become a bigger concern. We're super excited. Our latest, and maybe we could do this on the next webinar or one of the future ones, we partnered with a leading scientific researcher on neuroscience. Just wrote a book called The Age-Proof Brain, and we have conversations around, really the hopeful research on things we can be doing to keep our brains young and healthy. So that's really fascinating. But again, that's our biggest concern, as we age. And then, we just have our play on words here, administrivia. As time goes on and issues arise, they tend to compound, right? We don't necessarily solve for something and it goes away, right? We just have to manage it. So this is, again, I point back to the network that we have around us, the network of resources that can help us navigate through some of the potential challenges associated with longevity. Caregiving, especially if anyone's, experienced a caregiving situation as I have in my family, there's certainly a financial aspect to it, but there's a lot more that goes into it as well. So we've got some additional research from the Age Lab if anybody's interested in that as also. Last phase, solo journey. Not something we want to harp on, right? But also we think prudent to have conversations. If there is a dynamic change, what does that look like? And this is not just through widowhood. People living alone, never being married, divorce. We actually have the highest percentage of people living alone in the country. It's like near 30%, and this is across all age cohorts. Dr. Joe actually just had an article that came out, I think it was either end of last week or this week in Forbes, and it was all about this topic around people living alone. And really what this could do is it could it could thrust us back into a different phase. We'll answer the three questions probably a little bit differently, right? If we're doing it with a partner and then doing it solo. So again, not something to harp on, but certainly, want to have conversations from a planning standpoint. We always like something fun after that. We found this, we just think it's funny. It's called the age you peak at everything. So, for instance, learning a language at age 7. If anybody here has trouble remembering people's names, I'll put my hand up. Don't worry. If you're over age 22, that's when that peaked. Remembering faces at age 29. Nobel Prize winning discovery at 40. Life satisfaction twice, age 23, probably makes sense. You kind of have the whole world ahead of you. 69, peak of resources, financial, social, physical, so on and so forth. The one I love is at age 74, happiness with body. I love that, right? That's just, hey, it is what it is. So I like that. 82, psychological well-being defined as tomorrow is going to be better than today. So as we prepare and we have these conversations, this is why we're so excited to work with Deborah and team. We've got two really important questions on the screen. Number one on the left side, how much will retirement cost? We have to figure that out, right? But that has to be solved for, and that's what we work to. But I know Deborah and team think about that, but also with equal weight, what will I be doing and how will I be doing it? And not just day one, right? Day 5,654, right? Pick whatever day you want. These questions, demand equal conversation and planning. And I think the more we can do that, the more we can ensure that picture is going to look how we want it to look. And we can navigate through that extremely well. So with that, let me end with two quotes. And then certainly if anybody has any comments or questions, we can address those. But the first one's from Dr. Joe Coughlin. And he says the 4 phases of retirement enable a clear vision to plan and anticipate what's likely to come. Effective preparation can thereby reduce the stress of uncertainty and boost prolonged independence and control. I think that's the key word there, right? We want to maintain control in the life that so many of us wish to lead tomorrow. My second quote, my favorite philosopher, Yogi Berra. Yogi Berra once said, "The future ain't what it used to be." Right. So we just have to think a little bit differently, and that's what we at Hartford Fund, certainly our partnership with the Age Lab, Deborah and team, think about for everybody here on the line. So with that, I'll just end my comments with this a huge thank you for having me and for everybody joining us. And I'll turn it back to you, Deborah. And certainly, if we have any questions, we can take them.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. I think this has been so informative. I haven't seen any questions in our question and answer portal here. Although, please, anybody who has any, please jot them down here. I have a couple of questions, of course, because I always do. Can you talk a little bit more about the resources you mentioned for navigating longevity?
Yeah. So I gave the example of the CAP certified contractor, right? Somebody who's an expert at, understanding what needs to be done to a home, right? To make it appropriate, right? To age in. So that's a good one. They have now that they used to be called geriatric care managers, but now they're called life care managers now.
Okay.
And they're fantastic at helping to navigate just some of the complexities of specifically around like systems, right? If we are experiencing a caregiving situation or a health issue, those folks can really be good at sort of pointing us in the right direction. And then, if you want to talk, Eleanor, I know you all have some great resources to connect to through the firm, correct?
Right.
With the
I mean,
longevity team.
We have some lovely people that can help, locate great places to age.
Yep.
If you need different types of care at different stages in life, we have people that help with that. I know we've talked to a lot of people who would prefer to have kind of a concierge doctor versus, because when you're going to so many different types of doctors at the older times in life, it's nice to have somebody who's kind of quarterbacking that. Like, we quarterback your financial situation, but to have somebody quarterbacking your medical situation is also quite a nice thing. I remember trying to get a handle on my dad's medical stuff because he was having so many different doctors, and I'm putting in all his pills into the thing. I'm getting all these danger, these things are
Right.
contraindicated for one another, and I'm feeling like he's not getting the best care possible. So it's always nice to try to see if that is something that's well within your budget. I was also I just finished watching on Netflix that Living to 100, The Secret of the Blue Zones. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've watched that.
I
thought
haven't
that was
seen it yet. I have a flight tomorrow, so that was my scheduled time to do it. But I've heard good things about it.
Oh, it was very, very interesting, and they mentioned a lot of the things that you were just talking about. You know, having a community of either, you know, a lot of these people have a faith-based community, but it can also just be a community of like-minded people, who are, you know, who just you know, reinforce one another and look out for one another. You know, these a lot of these people live in places where they are forced to do a lot of exercise just in general to keep their body and soul together, right? To farming or you know, walking from place to place to get things done or to get food or to you know, make their lives occur, right? Not like I mean, in the US we are much more sedentary, I think, and hence our obesity situations, stuff like that. But and they are also a lot more plant-based than we are. We tend to be much more, we eat a lot more meat, I think, than a lot of these people. But that's just neither here nor there. So, but it was a very, very interesting Netflix show, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that was we could all take something away from that. Okay, another question. Oh, we have one in the queue box. Hold on. How does one get a copy of the white paper? We can definitely forward that to you, Daniel. We will, if Bill will forward it to us, and we can definitely get that to you. So we will for sure get that over into your inbox. So I hope we have your email, so we can definitely get that to you. And where can we find out more information about the Age Lab and this research, Bill?
Okay, yeah, perfect. There's two questions right alongside each other. So yes, we'll make sure we get you all the white paper. And we have a workbook on this topic as well, which is helpful.
Great.
A lot of blank spaces to just fill in. So we'll make sure that you have that to send out to everybody.
That would be fabulous.
Yeah, so we can get that. And then just, you know, if you're interested in the work that from the Age Lab, just, you know, Google the Age Lab. They've got, you know, their website where it lists a lot of their research projects. Dr. Joe, I mentioned, he just wrote an article in Forbes. He's pretty active on, you know, social media. So if you're on LinkedIn or whatever it may be, if you want to follow him, he usually has some really interesting thought pieces that come out. So yeah, we just you know, leverage the technology, but we'll certainly make sure we get everyone the relevant information based off of today's conversation.
Well, I think that's terrific, and I'm really grateful that you guys are doing this work. I mean, I think, you know, there's so much to be learned. There's so much data out there, and sometimes we don't get the right data. You know, I mean, I was just reading an article the other day because we have a history in my family of dementia, and so I was reading an article about how maybe that blood test that measures amyloid plaque in your blood is not necessarily the best thing to take because people don't know what you're going to do with that data, right? And it's not necessarily the healthiest thing to know, and it isn't a great predictor of whether you're going to get dementia or not. So, you know, there's all these things that have not been, you know, FDA approved, or there's not a lot of things that have been studied for long enough to really give you all the facts. So the fact that you guys are working with MIT and getting the real stories out there is very, very, very helpful because, you know, you don't want to go off half-cocked and you don't want to make choices that can affect the rest of your life based on faulty research. So we really appreciate all that you're doing, Bill. And thank you so much for spending this time with us today. I know Deborah and I thank you and Ken for everything that you do for us and the Hartford Funds. We really super appreciate you guys taking the time to be with us. If anybody else has any more questions, we're going to be sending you out this this workbook and this white paper. So please stay tuned for that. Deborah, do you have anything else? Follow up?
No, not at all. But I just want to thank you, Bill and Ken, as well again, and to all who have joined us today. And certainly if any questions come to mind after this, please reach out to either me or Eleanor or to your financial planner here at Carter Financial.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, if we don't talk to you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, all.